Causation.
Try again.
Contextualization.
How many books?
3.
Not far, but...
Close. Reads. 3 close reads.
Correct, but it really shouldn't have taken you an hour.
World history is a giant topic. Really, it's huge. Like, it's supposed to cover everything. So you can't just say, okay, kids, read all this, then write about it so I know you read it. This course puts reading, writing, and critical thinking in every lesson. Because, let's face it, without those skills, student engagement is a non-starter. So, in this video, we're going to focus on the WHP reading approach, 3 close reads.
To start, let's talk about the actual articles in this course. We think they're unique for a number of reasons and are nothing like what you find in traditional history textbooks. So we just made a claim about our articles. That means we need to back it up with some evidence. First, nearly every article in the course was created for the course. Over 25 authors have written articles for the World History Project, and they represent different backgrounds, genders, and countries of origin. This course is global to its core. Second, levelled readings. All of the course readings are provided at multiple reading levels. We want to make sure that students can read our material at whatever level is appropriate for them and still participate in the class.
We use a scale called Lexile to measure the complexity of each of our readings. For example, a measure of 900 is roughly something a 14-year-old should be able to read at the beginning of the year, while 1200 is something we'd expect a 17 or 18-year-old to read comfortably. Our target audience for these articles is your average 15-year-old. And teachers know that even though we are riveted by the rise and fall of empires, we're competing with social media, makeup tutorials, and the entirety of pop culture most students carry in their pockets. But the articles in this course were written and revised with the tone almost as gripping as an epic fail that just went viral, but not so wacky that we can't convey the depth and meaning making our students need for true engagement. And it's not as if the articles do all the work. We help students get the most out of the readings by putting a big focus on their approach. We don't stop at reading and comprehension, which we realize is hard enough already. We also want to get students reading the way historians do, carefully and critically, with one eye on the details and another on the big picture. Not easy, not simple, but also not impossible.
After a lot of practice, we've discovered that we need to structure the reading process for our students. It gets them into the practice of reading more like historians and less like teenagers with other things on their minds. We call this 3 close reads. If you're familiar with big history, then you've heard of this and you know it works. Let me tell you about my experience with this process. 3 close reads is a pretty simple way to help kids structure their reading and make clear decisions about what to focus on with each read. Admittedly, when I was first teaching 3 close reads, I took it kind of literally. I made the kids read everything carefully 3 times. This turned me into the favourite teacher of approximately 0 students. Apparently, sucking all the joy out of reading is not a good teaching strategy. But, like I said, this took practice. As I got more familiar with the process, I realised there were ways to teach and use this process without it being triple torture. The key for me is to make sure there is a clear question or idea in students' minds as they read. This gets them to focus their attention on a particular dimension of the article. Let's face it, some of these articles can hit you with an avalanche of details at first, especially the overview articles, which are meant to summarise an entire period of history in about 1,200 words.
Here's an idea. Kim and I are going to tell you how we teach 3 close reads, now that we've had some experience with the process. There are ways to integrate this really effective tool without it being something you and your students dread. If you get this right in the beginning, things will be much easier later on. As we know, all classrooms are unique. That applies to WHP classrooms as well. We're all about the you do you and the fly your own flag. Still, when it comes to reading, we see a lot of important commonalities across classrooms. For students behind in their grade level in reading by a couple years or more, 3 close reads can help them anticipate challenges and concepts or vocabulary. It also helps students develop a mental model that supports reading comprehension. For more advanced readers, it really clues them into the historical thinking practices they are using as part of their close reading process. They start moving towards the more expert practices that historians use when they read.
Now, the name 3 close reads is a bit misleading, but so is the name Greenland. I think of it as one rich reading experience at 3 different levels. Students don't actually read through an entire article word for word 3 times through. It's more like 1.5 to 1 3/4 close reads. But that's as awkward as naming a country green on the 20% that's not covered in Iceland. And I make sure my students know this as well. The first time students hear 3 close reads, I almost always get some sighs and grumbles and eye rolling. I do get a bit of eye rolling, but instead of letting that hurt my feelings, I offer a little buy-in activity to help students understand that reading something more than once won't put them in a coma. First, I ask my class, if you play sport, please stand up. My athletes stand and I ask how often they practice and for how long. It's usually very often and a lot of hours. Then I ask if anyone plays an instrument. More stand and I ask how much they practice, maybe even more frequently and for more hours. Theatre students, does a play begin with opening night or do you have rehearsals? I keep going until everyone is standing. They start to get that reading your social feed is one thing, but reading for this course is a skill. Before we start, I prepare a question or idea for them to read against. Sometimes I use the unit driving question or maybe an evaluating and corroborating question from within the lesson.
Those are great ideas, Kim. Also, something I like is to discuss the question or idea with my students before sending them off on their first read. Over time, as we move further along in the course, I get more creative with this box at the top. Sometimes I let students come up with their own question or idea, which I pre-approve, of course. Other times, it can be a fun way to bring out different perspectives. Sometimes I split the class and give different questions. This can start great discussions about how people can have such different interpretations of the same historical account.
Now, armed with a question or idea to read against, we do the first read. It's really a skim. I think of this as a quarter read. It's just so quick. It's like you can smell what's for dinner, but it's not time to eat. The second round is a more traditional read, where you dig in and take a few bites, making sense of what the article says. This is also an opportunity for students to examine the article for unfamiliar vocabulary, so they can work on understanding the specific words they don't know.
Also, every article in the course comes with accompanying questions. We call them key ideas, understanding content, and they are great for the second read. You can point your students to those as they dig into the article, or you can come up with your own. I use the provided questions because they're so tailored to this content, and they really help students connect to the big ideas in the course. I've met teachers who like to mix this up and do things like place the questions around the room. Then groups of students provide their own answers to each question. For you, it's a great way to check for understanding, and it's an opportunity for an engaged class discussion. As with most things in the course, feel free to change it up. Third, the evaluating and corroborating read. This is like a half read because it's so focused. The third read is a chance to re-examine the question or idea they read against, which brings the process full circle. Now, students can really dig in and digest everything that's being served. It's also a chance to re-examine articles and videos from earlier in this unit, or even from units they've already finished. Maybe their perspective is different from when they first learned the materials. There's a whole buffet of connected information, and your students can taste it all. I shouldn't make videos when I'm hungry.
So, to recap, first read, more like a quarter read. The second is a full read, and the third is another half. So, if you do the math, it's like 1 3/4 close reads. The trick is to establish this technique as a habit without crushing students' enthusiasm. That's why I don't make every reading a close read at the beginning of this course. Try it with the articles you think are most likely to engage and challenge your students. And both Colby and I have learned to read the room. Eye rolls are annoying, but also communicative. So I try to figure out what's causing them. Is the process frustratingly hard, or are they so good at it now that they're bored? Discontent can stem from both too easy and too hard. And if you're lucky, maybe that eye roll is a fully engaged response to something within the article they want to challenge.
I know what you mean, but once you decode their facial messages, you can adjust your teaching. The long-term goal is for this process to be internalized so that eventually students do the 3 reads simultaneously. Close reading becomes a habit. And look, this practice is not something your kids will learn in a single session. Good habits don't form overnight. You'll have to reinforce it throughout the course. Towards the middle of the school year, I might do a couple of readings where I go back to the beginning and model 3 close reads all over again. Kind of a refresher. Also, since they've had so much practice, your students will probably be better at it, and that builds confidence.
I always remind students that reading is not just understanding the words on the page. There's a lot more to it, and it's okay if it's challenging. I tell them about my own experience of being frustrated when I read a long article and felt like nothing stuck until I learned to read closely. And I may even admit that, for me, this didn't happen until college.
College? Okay, fine, me too. Look, whatever their reading level, we tell our students that 3 close reads is a skill they can take with them, beyond this class and beyond high school. The facts of history don't change, but the skills to understand them and to understand information in general is something worth building.
Inspiring. You should run for office.
I did. I'm the mayor of the Teachers Lounge.
Oh, if this is about your missing tuna melt.
The new refrigerator rules are effective immediately.